What happens when a movie costs a fortune and nobody shows up? In 2025, studios didn't just miss expectations. They missed reality. Big names, massive budgets, loud marketing, and then silence at the box office. Halfway through this list, the numbers stop being funny and start becoming dangerous. And one entry near the top may have quietly closed the door on an entire franchise. Let's break down the 12 biggest box office disasters of 2025 and why they failed so hard. Number 12. Predator, Badlands, 2025. This one looks successful until you actually do the math. On paper, Predator Badlands doesn't look like a disaster. It opened solidly. It had recognizable branding. It even pulled in a decent worldwide total. But here's the problem studios keep ignoring. Making money is not the same thing as making profit. Disney reportedly spent well over $200 million bringing this entry to life once production costs and marketing were added together. That meant the movie needed an enormous worldwide run just to break even. It didn't get there. Not even close. The Predator brand has always been steady, not explosive. These movies do fine when budgets are controlled. This one wasn't. The studio leaned hard into digital visuals, global promotion, and a release strategy that assumed international audiences would carry the weight. They didn't. What made this sting was timing. This was supposed to prove the franchise still mattered. Instead, it showed exactly how fragile mid-tier franchises have become when treated like mega events. The result wasn't a loud collapse. It was a quiet financial bleed. Predator Badlands didn't fail spectacularly. It failed efficiently. And that kind of loss is often worse because studios don't panic. They repeat it. Number 11. The Alto Knights, 2025. This felt like a movie from another decade, and not in a good way. The Alto Knights arrived with prestige written all over it. Veteran stars, a classic crime story, a studio convinced nostalgia would do the heavy lifting. But audiences have changed, and this movie never adjusted. With a budget hovering around $45 million, the film needed strong word of mouth and adult audiences to show up consistently. Instead, it opened weak and faded almost instantly. The worldwide total barely crossed 10 million. The biggest issue wasn't quality, it was relevance. Crime dramas used to thrive in theaters. Now, viewers expect them at home. This one looked like a streaming title but carried a theatrical price tag. Studio leadership pushed it through anyway, convinced name recognition would compensate. It didn't. Younger viewers ignored it. Older viewers waited, and theaters sat empty. The studio defended the release, suggesting long-term value on digital platforms. That may happen, but that doesn't erase the theatrical loss. When a movie fails to justify its release strategy, it becomes a cautionary tale. The Alto Knights didn't just underperform, it confirmed that some genres have quietly left theaters behind. Number 10. After the Hunt, 2025. This one had everything, except an audience. After the Hunt was positioned as a serious, adult-focused drama. Big stars, heavy themes. A studio willing to spend between 70 and 80 million to make it happen. That alone raised eyebrows. When it finally released, the response was brutal. The domestic box office barely reached 5 million. Audience feedback was cold. Word of mouth turned negative fast, and the film vanished from theaters almost immediately. The problem wasn't effort, it was timing. Modern theatrical audiences rarely show up for original adult dramas unless there's overwhelming buzz or awards momentum. This film had neither. Streaming platforms can absorb losses better than traditional studios, but that doesn't make this outcome acceptable. Spending nearly 80 million to earn a fraction of that sends a clear message. After the Hunt didn't fail because it took risks. It failed because the industry hasn't figured out where films like this belong anymore. And until that changes, more projects like this will quietly disappear the same way. Number 9. Mickey 17, 2025. This was a blank check and the ink ran out fast. After previous critical success, the director was given near-total freedom on this project. The result was a strange, ambitious science fiction story with a massive budget and limited mainstream appeal. Production costs climbed past 100 million. Delays stacked up. Creative disagreements slowed momentum. By the time the film finally released, interest had faded. The opening numbers were weak. The global total stalled around 130 million. That might sound respectable until you realize the break-even point was closer to 300 million. The studio reacted quickly. The theatrical run was cut short. The movie was rushed to digital platforms. Marketing stopped almost overnight. This wasn't a public meltdown. It was a silent retreat. Mickey 17 represents a growing issue in modern filmmaking. Original ideas still matter, but when they're funded like blockbusters without blockbuster appeal, the outcome is predictable. Ambition alone doesn't sell tickets. Number 8. Ballerina, 2025. This proves something studios didn't want to hear. Ballerina exists in the same world as John Wick. Same style, same tone, same rules. What it didn't have was the one thing audiences actually cared about. Without the franchise's central figure, interest dropped fast. The movie opened decently, then collapsed in its second weekend. The final worldwide total landed far below what was needed to justify a 90 million budget. This wasn't about performance or effort. It was about identity. The franchise is inseparable from its lead. Remove that, and the illusion breaks. Studios often believe a universe can survive without its anchor. Ballerina showed how risky that assumption is. Instead of expanding the brand, it exposed its limits. And that lesson will echo through future spin-offs whether studios listen or not. Number 7. Mission Impossible. The Final Reckoning, 2025. This one made money and still lost it. Mission Impossible. The Final Reckoning looked like a victory at first glance. Huge opening, strong worldwide numbers. Fans showed up. The marketing promised a grand farewell, and audiences responded. But behind the scenes, the budget had already done the damage. Years of delays pushed production costs into dangerous territory. By the time filming wrapped, the total spend had ballooned to nearly 400 million. That meant the movie needed close to $1 billion worldwide just to break even. It didn't get there. In any other era, this would have been called a hit. Instead, it became a financial paradox, a popular movie that still ended up in the red. The studio knew the math. They released it anyway. Some insiders believe this was less about profit and more about legacy. A thank you project, a final bow done without compromise. But that strategy comes with consequences. When even reliable franchises can't survive runaway budgets, studios start questioning everything. The Final Reckoning didn't end the series with failure. It ended it with a warning. Spectacle alone is no longer enough. Number 6. Fantastic Four, 2025. Another reboot, same result. Fantastic Four was introduced as a fresh start, but it carried the weight of every failed attempt before it. Marvel promised this time would be different. A new cast, a slightly adjusted tone, a massive financial commitment meant to signal confidence. Once reshoots and global marketing were factored in, the total investment reportedly climbed well past 300 million. The opening weekend looked encouraging. Fans showed up out of curiosity. Longtime followers wanted to believe. But curiosity is fragile. Without strong momentum, it fades fast. The second weekend drop was steep, and casual viewers never filled the gap. Online conversation cooled. Repeat viewings never materialized. By the end of its theatrical run, the film barely crossed 500 million worldwide. On its own, that number sounds solid. In context, it was nowhere near enough. The break-even point sat far higher, turning what looked like a success into a financial disappointment. This movie was meant to launch a new chapter for Marvel. Instead, it exposed franchise fatigue in real time. Audiences have seen this origin before. They know the beats. New faces alone couldn't hide familiar problems. The most worrying part wasn't the total. It was the shape of the run. Big opening, sharp fall, limited staying power. Fantastic Four didn't crash loudly. It quietly ran out of air. And for Marvel, that silence may be the clearest warning yet. Number 5. Thunderbolts, 2025. a team-up nobody asked for. Thunderbolts was positioned as the next big ensemble event. The studio talked about a bold new direction, fresh dynamics, high stakes. Audiences didn't buy it. The film carried a budget close to $200 million. The characters were familiar but rarely loved. The marketing struggled to explain why this group mattered. The result was predictable. A modest opening followed by a fast drop. The final worldwide total landed far below expectations. Internal reports listed it as a major contributor to studio losses that year. What hurt most was the confusion afterward. Executives acted surprised. Fans weren't. This movie wasn't rejected because it was different. It was rejected because it felt unnecessary. Viewers are more selective now. They want purpose, not just logos. Thunderbolts proved that shared universes don't guarantee interest anymore. Without emotional investment, even the biggest brands can stumble. This wasn't just a miss. It was a signal that the formula is wearing thin. Number 4. Snow White, 2025. This was expensive, noisy, and unavoidable. Disney poured enormous resources into Snow White. Production issues pushed costs past $270 million. Marketing added even more. Before release, online debate overshadowed everything else. By the time audiences could finally see the movie, interest had already cooled. The box office result was underwhelming. The worldwide total failed to justify the spending. Losses climbed into the hundreds of millions. What followed was worse. Instead of owning the outcome, the studio shifted blame. That strategy didn't help the numbers, and it didn't help trust either. The bigger issue is what this represents. Live-action remakes used to be safe. Now they're risky. Audiences are tired of recycled stories without fresh payoff. Snow White didn't fail quietly, it failed publicly, and it forced Disney to rethink a strategy they relied on for over a decade. Number 3. Tron Aries, 2025. This one may have ended everything. Tron Aries arrived 15 years too late, and timing mattered more than anyone wanted to admit. The original film had strong cult love, the kind that thrives on memories, late-night rewatches, and glowing nostalgia. What it never had was broad, mainstream demand. The studio ignored that distinction and treated this return like a major event. The budget climbed past $200 million as expectations rose. Marketing was everywhere. The release plan leaned heavily on the idea that people would show up simply because they remembered the name. That was the gamble. It didn't pay off. The opening weekend was soft. The second weekend drop was sharp. By the end of its run, the worldwide total fell far short of covering costs. Industry analysts estimate losses close to $150 million, which is not a stumble. That is a hard stop. This wasn't just another underperforming sequel. It felt like a full shutdown. The audience that once cared had aged out or moved on. New viewers never found a reason to connect. The distance between those groups was too wide to bridge. Studios often talk about revivals as if memory equals demand. Tron Aries proved that memory fades and demand has to be earned again. After this result, it's difficult to imagine the grid lighting up anytime soon. Number 2. The Smashing Machine, 2025. This was supposed to change how audiences saw its star. The Smashing Machine had all the ingredients of a prestige breakout, a serious role, a real-life story, festival buzz. Critics praised the performance. Industry insiders talked awards. Then it opened, and almost nobody showed up. The studio expected a respectable launch. Instead, the opening weekend barely crossed 5 million. By the third weekend, attendance collapsed. The total domestic run ended near 11 million against a budget around 50 million. The issue wasn't quality, it was expectation. Audiences have a very specific image of this star. They want confidence, humor, and scale. What they got here was something quieter, heavier, and far more intimate. That disconnect mattered. The timing didn't help either. Prestige films now need perfect release windows, strong awards momentum, and clear messaging. This one had none of that. The result was painful, not just financially, but strategically. Studios took note. Serious reinventions are harder than ever. Viewers are less forgiving, and star power alone no longer guarantees attention. The smashing machine didn't just underperform. It proved that transformation is risky in a market that rewards familiarity above all else. Number 1. Mission Impossible. The Final Reckoning, 2025. This is the biggest paradox of the year. Mission Impossible. The Final Reckoning made nearly 600 million worldwide. In any sane world, that would be a massive success. This was not a sane budget. Years of delays pushed production costs close to 400 million. Marketing added even more. The break-even point drifted into impossible territory. The movie did everything right creatively. Strong action, clear marketing, a sense of finality. Audiences responded, but the math never worked. This wasn't a creative failure. It was a financial one. A reminder that even the most reliable franchises can't survive unlimited spending. Studios once believed bigger always meant safer. This film shattered that illusion. It showed that discipline matters more than spectacle. Ironically, this entry may not be remembered as a disaster by audiences, but for executives, it's a red flag. If a franchise this strong can't escape the red, nothing is guaranteed anymore. So what did 2025 really prove? That audiences aren't gone, they're selective. Big budgets don't impress anymore. Familiar names don't guarantee trust, and nostalgia can't carry a franchise forever. Some of these movies will live on through streaming, others will quietly disappear, but every one of them leaves a lesson behind. Which of these surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts below, subscribe for more deep dives, and remember sometimes the biggest failures tell the most important stories.